back. More than a month after the legislature passed the property tax amendment on the ballot for November, the state released some initial estimates of just how much money local cities and counties could lose if the amendment were to pass. The state projects it would be about $12 billion annually by the year 2031. After the numbers came out, I spoke to former Republican State Senator Jeff Brandes, who has been examining the property tax issue. He is the president of the Florida Policy Project, a nonpartisan think tank. Jeff, there's a couple of things I want to cover with you. We've talked about this before, but I want to start with, to me, is the unseen real headline of what's going on with this attempt behind this constitutional amendment, and that's Ron DeSantis announcing that he's not campaigning for this. Like, he's not going to be out there trying to curry and whip up votes to support it. And at this point, I don't think anybody or any single group has stepped forward to announce that they were going to support it. What do you make of Ron DeSantis' decision to just sort of drop this on the state and then walk away from it?
Yeah, look, I don't know who is coming out to fund the pro side of this amendment. I know that there's multiple groups coming out to kind of form the opposition to it. But again, the governor has basically said this is not my proposal anymore because they've changed a few words. I don't think the changes they made were substantially material to his overall goal. But ultimately, I think he has, I think he got what he wanted when it got on the ballot, and he gets the talking point for the 2028 election. But I don't know that he actually wants it to pass because it will be a dumpster fire on the back end and he's going to get blamed for it.
We should talk about this a little bit. You are part of a group that is suing over the ballot language, and your desire, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you would like a judge to step in and either knock the ballot entirely off or reword the ballot. What is it that your lawsuit is seeking?
Well, look, we believe that the ballot language, based on current case law and from both the state Supreme Court and multiple other court findings, basically is trying to tilt the pinball machine using the word based on the words that it uses. It uses the words like save our homes from excessive property tax. Well, we can find a constitutional amendment that was about saving the Everglades that the courts threw out because of that word save, because it assumes you're going to lose something. So there's that. This amendment says it's going to help small businesses. Well, and I'm sure there will be some small businesses that help, but it'll hurt some small businesses as well. There's probably about 7 or 8 other phrases in that amendment that we think are not neutral, that are leaning comments, and the courts have historically thrown those out. So if they follow precedent in this case, we think that we have an excellent chance of prevailing.
Now, again, I just want to be clear. Is the goal to knock the ballot completely off, or to have the Supreme Court do some sort of curative fix by rewriting the amendment?
Well, I think it depends on the order of magnitude, right? I think if there is a couple of phrases that they can change, then I think that they will work to change those phrases. I don't think they're willing to do a full rewrite. And if all of the different areas that we think are problematic are found by the court to be problematic, then I think they will require the legislature come and take it back up, because you get into a separation of powers issues.
So one of the things I thought was interesting is a couple weeks ago, I interviewed Byron Donalds, and it was the first time I had a chance to talk to him about this language. And I can tell you from both his body language and what he said, he's not a particular fan of this constitutional amendment. A couple of times he noted that if it fails, we can come back and do a more thoughtful proposal next year through the Budget and Tax Commission that's going to be meeting, or through the legislature. So again, while he has said publicly he will vote for it because he believes Floridians need tax relief, his wording also leaves clearly the impression that he doesn't think a lot of this plan, and I don't think he'd be upset if it failed. What's your impression of listening to Byron Donalds these days?
In this legislation and in this amendment that frankly just people haven't thought of and thought through, and I think he would much rather tailor something than have something forced on him.
I think one of the most amazing things to me, and we had discussed this before, but now it's come to fruition, is that there was no what's referred to in the legislature as scoring, no analysis provided before House members and senators voted to put this on the ballot. no analysis as to what the actual impact of the language would be. We now have that. They finally have produced it late. But, talk to me a little bit about when you look at the list of how this will impact cities and counties across Florida, not just in year one, but projecting out, as you were talking about, into year 3, 4, 5, and beyond. Talk to me about what we now know is the real impact on cities and counties.
Yeah, I would go beyond and say not only did they not have modeling, they didn't have the basic math necessary to make any type of decision on this. What the legislature did effectively was malpractice, right? Imagine you had a patient that you chose to diagnose, and provide treatment to. You provided treatment up front, and then you diagnosed on the back end. This is what the legislature did. It finally has done the MRIs and everything else like that on the back end. It has not, but it didn't do it on the front end before we actually implemented the treatment.
Part of the language of the ballot also says, this grandiose language that it will not impact police, fire, emergency services, a litany of things. In reality, I don't see how they can uphold that promise. If Miami-Dade loses the amount, the hundreds of millions of dollars that they're likely to lose, it seems unlikely that it's not going to have an impact on police and fire and other first responders. Am I wrong?
No, I talked to a South Florida organization just a couple of days ago that laid out for me. They have a special district they have a special fire district. They walked me through how this is potentially a 80 to $100 million hit for their very large fire department. So I think we have real issues here, and I don't think anybody has, again, while we've seen maybe city and county, we haven't seen what the impact is on special districts. Maybe that's coming next in a few weeks because they seem to be slowly rolling out the impacts of this amendment. But I don't think anybody can say that this won't impact police and firefighters. It may be that certain cities will have to disband their police departments and join with the county sheriffs as their solution because they can't afford their police departments anymore. I think those are the types of things you're going to start seeing. It may not be and frankly, I don't think it will be defunding the police as much as it will be just leaving empty shifts open. For example, if your city grew and you needed to hire 8 police officers, but you could only afford 2, well, I think you're going to hire 2. Well, that's not technically defunding the police; it's just not funding them.
It all goes back to what we started this conversation with, which was what was Ron DeSantis's motive? Was his motive in doing this actual, thoughtful property tax reform, which I think a lot of people believe is necessary, versus just grabbing the headline of, I proposed something, the legislature weakened it because they wanted to protect schools, so I'm walking away, but I still get to claim credit for having advanced a proposal to eliminate property taxes in Florida. Look at me, aren't I great? Is that Ron DeSantis's legacy on this?
I think so. Look, I think that's his legacy, and I think the legislature went along because they had done so little on affordability in the last 2 years that they felt like, hey, if we do this, then we're it's a prophylactic on affordability, and we will not be able to be taxed on affordability because we passed this amendment and allow voters to vote for it. But I think having spoken to a lot of the legislators after this amendment was passed by them, and I think a lot of them are having buyer's remorse. I think a lot of them understand now, and I think you're going to see a series of them coming out and saying, I voted to allow you to support this, but I'm not planning to vote for it because they've heard from their communities. They are beginning to understand the local impacts.